purely fictional. But if you had a referral like this, I don't know if you get nice information from your GPs or whoever, with nice clinical information, or whether you just get a one-line or people just rock up. I know I never get lots of information on my referral, so you've got to try to sort it out yourself. But if this was your patient, what would you be doing with it? Or what would be some of the things that you would assess maybe over the first couple of visits, just as routine? Neurovascular assessment? Yep. Footwear assessments, skin quality, yep. Strength? Sorry? Range of motion? Anything else? I'm relying on you because I don't know anything about feet, so, okay, you guys are the experts. Yeah, but look, I'm thinking that's probably, you know, what I would think would be pretty good. And when I had a bit of a look at seeing what podiatrists do in terms of an assessment, you know, patient history, we'll take a patient history. Yep. Neuropathy screen, yes. Biomechanics, range of movement, looking for deformity, yes. Calluses, investigations of the pressure area, yep. Peripheral circulation, yep. Footwear, yes. Who would currently, before coming today, have screened for falls risk? One. Be proud. Get your hand up. That's good. Okay. So, you know, the fact is that it's not much to add to this, but I suppose I just want to just create an argument as to why it's so important for you guys to do what you're already doing. You're doing stuff which is going to lead to effective interventions for falls already. You're doing the assessment, no question about that. So then you've got that information, so now you can actually, there's even more justification because you might have to take the assessment intervention you do and take it a bit further. So, the quality of interaction, I mentioned this right at the start, it's about what happens to balance, and balance starts at the feet. The picture on the left-hand side there, I don't know how clear, whether it's a little bit darker, you can all see pretty bad feet with bad bunions and hallux valgus and stuff. I clearly remember the referral we got for this lady. Into our clinic, it was a one-liner from a GP, and all it said is, please assess such and such. She's having problems with her walking. So I remember seeing her in the waiting room, and I went out to her, lovely lady, you know, cognitively good. She goes, oh yeah, walking's not good. And then she stood up, and she was walking like this, and I thought, that is the most peculiar gait pattern I've ever seen in my life. So it doesn't seem to match a neurological gait disorder or anything. Anyway, we got her into the gym, we started having a bit of a chat. We had looked at her shoes and her feet a bit better. So she had really poor footwear. She had the holes cut out on each of the sides where the bunions were, and then we took her shoes off. And then there was a bit of a picture there. Then we looked underneath her feet, and the calluses and corns and stuff that were underneath there, I mean, I'd never seen anything in my life. I was just like, so severe. I was absolutely flabbergasted. But that referral really highlighted to me the one thing, it didn't matter what else I assessed. It didn't matter about her balance, it didn't matter about her vision or her medications. If somehow we didn't improve the interaction of that lady with the feet, or you know, between her foot and the ground, we weren't going to solve anything. The podiatrist who we had access to, that was the key person who was going to be able to intervene for that lady, regardless of any other risk factor. So I suppose one of the things is that we have a lot of risk factors for falls, as Teresa highlighted, and sometimes, you know, it might be that a specific profession does have to take the lead role. It might be you, it might be the physio, it might be the OT. It's none of us can monopolise it. We all need to work together. Okay, so that's one thing. I don't want to make an issue about the number of falls because there are a stack of falls. To give you a rough indication, if we look at diabetes again as a rationale for screening, there's about 4 million people over the age of 65 in 2019. Okay, we know about a third of those are going to fall, and that's only the ones who report it. It's probably closer to 50%, so it makes about 2 million people. How many diabetics do you think are over the age of 60 based on National Diabetes Service Scheme figures? They don't report over 65, so it doesn't quite make my graphic work, so we'll have to take it from 60. I'm a bit annoyed about that, but how many in hundreds of thousands of people do you think are over the age of 60? Of that? So it's a bit off, so it's about 870,000, which is still, that's a huge number of people reported as having diabetes, okay, over the age of 60. So the graph in terms of distribution looks a little bit like that. So from 60 on, more than 50%, probably closer to 60, 65% of the population with diabetes are over 60 and moving towards that much older age bracket. Okay? So this is going to move further to the right as our lifespan also increases and things. So if I was going to ask you, just from the perspective of screening everybody over the age of 65 for, you know, diabetic foot ulceration or risk of ulceration, you would see that there's over nearly 900,000 people Australia-wide who podiatrists should be doing this screening for, as long as they're accessing, and I know you would be doing this if you get a diabetic. You probably have issues with the number of diabetics who come to see a podiatrist. That's probably like another argument. But you can see that it's important to screen for that. But in terms of falling, diabetics have a much higher rate of recurrent falls over the age of 65. They've got a complex interaction of risk factors, not only mechanical, but things related to medication, blood sugar levels. And also they're twice as likely to have an injurious fall. So if you're just say, okay, just from a diabetic perspective, the rationale for screening for falls is absolutely essential. You should be asking that every time. But that's another case. But I know you don't just see diabetics, you see a whole range of people. You see a lot of people who are under 65 who've got lots of complex conditions, and they might most likely have emerging balance concerns. You see people generally over the age of 65, so you're a general older person. Those of you who work in residential aged care, the people who are at the most highest risk of falls are those who live in residential aged care. Okay, and it's a very complex interaction. So if anything you can be doing to targeting their feet to make sure their feet are better and their interaction with the ground is better, that's got to help in some way. And our Aboriginal population, they've got a high, in terms of fracture rates, their rate of fracture is slightly higher than that of the non-Aboriginal population as a result of falls and stuff. Okay, so you know you've got a captive kind of like population who you should be screening for. So your assessment is an opportunity to screen. So as Teresa said, if all you get away from today is probably, have you had a fall in the last 12 months? Okay, if the person says yes, then at least do something with that. Even if it's just referring back to the GP because you don't have time. I don't really care. It's more in terms of at least if you get the answer yes, then yeah. Because I know that sometimes we don't always have the time, our business isn't set up or our facility's not set up in terms of doing a lot extra. But as long as that information is passed on to somebody who can, or given to the patient to take ownership of what they need to do in terms of seeking out information, that's important. So, in terms of screening guidelines, there's lots of guidelines that have come out over the years. In terms of what we ask, so we generally ask a little bit more than just have you had a fall. But usually, so high risk of falls is this, 2 or more falls in the last 12 months, so recurrent falls. So if you ask somebody if they had a fall, and they said, oh, I've had a couple, probably an easy follow-up question would be to ask, have you had an injury? Okay? And then difficulty with walking or balance. Okay, so they're probably like the ones that we would be encouraging you to ask, and there's a screening tool which I'll show you in a moment. So if you get a positive response with that, you get a high falls risk. And from there we go on to kind of like working out what kind of interventions do we do. Now we're going to talk a little bit about high and low falls risk later on, and why it's not always simple to compartmentalise people into particular interventions. Okay? So, it might be that you're not set up or you don't think you're confident enough to do the screening for falls. Well, that's okay. You can have these printed out, you can print these out from the Stay on Your Feet website, okay, and you can have them in your practice. So people you're promoting fall screening there. You could have an iPad or something set up in your rooms and stuff, linking to the Stay on Your Feet fall risk checklist. So while they're waiting for you, they could be going through that within your practice. So you don't necessarily, if you're not set up to be able to ask the question yourself, you've got resources available where people could potentially be doing that while they've got that contact with your clinic. Okay? The main thing we're going to probably focus on in terms of a screening tool, which is probably the one which is linked to a little bit of objective assessment, so you can quantify things, is the FROTCOM screen. Okay? So the FROPCOM was developed quite a few years ago. Keith Phil and his research group, who Keith Phil gave that webinar presentation that Teresa spoke about before. But they developed this kind of like tool. It's very appropriate for use in a community-based setting. Probably not so much within a residential aged care facility, but within a community-based setting, it's fantastic. It's a very simple tool. What's the first question? It's obvious. Number of falls. How many falls have you had in the last 12 months? Okay. Second question. Prior to this fall, how much assistance was the individual requiring for daily activities? Okay. So you would grade it based on supervision, some assistance, completely dependent. And the third question, when walking and turning, does the person appear unsteady or at risk of losing their balance? So one of the things I know you would do routinely is the person's got to walk, unless they come in a wheelchair, they will have to walk from the waiting area into your room. Okay? So you're going to have some assessment. But one of the key things with this tool is that you need to do that little test there, okay? And that's not a hard test to do. It takes just a couple of moments and stuff. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you in a little bit, and you can practice it possibly, is just to quantify that, just using a stopwatch or your phone so you can get a time. So that's a different test altogether, okay? So, that is the FROPCOM. Very simple. Okay, so for our lady, Mrs. Smith, that case example, if we take her, she had 2 falls in the last 12 months, but was still independent with her ADLs. Okay, but she was slightly unsteady when you observed her gait. So for this lady, she's going to score a 3. Okay, so that makes her, theoretically, according to the FROPCOM, she's a low risk of falls. Okay, and we're going to come back to the FROPCOM's scoring in a little while. Okay, so I suppose the key thing that we wanted to maybe look at today is something slightly different, is looking at maybe some balance and mobility tests that you could do that possibly, you don't have to do them all, you only have to maybe do one, but why they're kind of like relatively important. We know you assess gaits, okay, so I'm going to just talk about maybe a different approach. I'm not sure when you do your gait assessment what kind of tools you use or what you're particularly looking at, but I'm going to say like some of the things that maybe I would look at from a physio perspective, okay? But your functional assessment is so important. That gives you so much information. Does a person struggle to get in and out of the chair in the waiting room or get on and off the couch? You have to help them. That tells you straight away they've got a strength issue or they've got a functional, they've got a proximal muscle weakness. So, you know, if you notice that, would you be inclined to maybe see, has the person had like is seeing a physio or doing some kind of exercise program? So you can take some of that information that you get from your direct observation. I'm sure some of you probably do standing on toes and you'll a quick strength assessment. Excellent assessment because you find out so much information, but it's taking that information and then referring on. So gait assessment, we're going to practice timed up and go in a second. Gait velocity, do any of you measure a person's walking speed? Yep, one. Okay, so I suppose one of the things I was talking about with Teresa is I would think that if you're doing an intervention which is targeting a person's kind of like maybe foot pain or whatever, or how they walk, it might be that quantifying a pre and post is a good way of seeing whether there's been any change to that, okay, whether you've made a difference. So gait velocity is a really quick thing which we'll show you how to do, and I'll show you briefly about a scale that you can use just to help you think about kind of like when you're observing a different type of gait. A quick balance test. So, what is one of the issues with somebody who's got a sensory deficit in the feet? So they've got like a peripheral neuropathy, not necessarily a motor neuropathy, but they've got you know, absent sensation in the foot. How is that going to impact on them functionally? So they might also develop a motor neuropathy, yes? So how is that going to, like, if you were to take that further, so functionally, how is that going to affect them in their everyday lives, for instance?
They can't feel their feet and they don't know where they're standing.
Okay. So, when might that be relevant? Uneven ground. So if you're walking outdoors somewhere. When else might it be relevant? Steps? Items on the floor? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so just going to tell you, so Mrs. Smith, she's got incontinence, unfortunately, has to get up 4 to 5 times at night to go to the toilet. she's also got nocturia. What's her balance going to be like if she's got a full-blown neuropathy, let's assume, and she can't feel the ground, doesn't turn the lights on either, she doesn't want to wake up Mr. Smith. Oh yeah, why not? That's barefoot. So, what's her balance going to be like when her eyes are closed? Or when it's dark and she can't see? Poor. Okay, so balance is based on tactile information, proprioceptive information, inner ear, vestibular function, and vision. So at night time, she's got no sensory kind of information coming from her feet. She hasn't turned the light on, so she can't really see, particularly when it's not a full moon and there's no light coming in from outside. So she's only relying on her inner ear function. And we know that inner ear function starts to decline anyway by the time we get to about 50 or so. So what's she got helping her to navigate, other than maybe her hands? Yeah. So you can see so neuropathy and sensory problems that you will identify every day are really important for a person's balance. So being able to maybe do a quick screen of that and saying, oh, that is a bit of a problem, maybe I need to refer to the OT to go and check out what the home environment is like and give some strategies. Or you can educate, have a sensor light on for when you get up at night to go to the toilet. So you can see a lot of the stuff that you find as a podiatrist is absolutely highly relevant in terms of fall risk and screening. And stick to stand. Okay. There's an abnormal gait on that side, a normal gait on that side. I know you all know that, you can tell. What I want you to do, okay, so just have a look at that. Look at those two pictures and just write down in a minute only what's different between those two gaits. Okay. In an orderly fashion. Let's have some answers. So slightly forwards. Yep, good. Okay, so we've got one. So we've got a person slightly tilted forward. Yeah, so yeah, there's a shorter kind of like striding compared to here. Absolutely, yeah. Arm swing, yeah, arm swing's reduced. We see one arm nicely further forward, both arms there fairly much by the side, and that would be, we could see probably, we probably would have reduced kind of like trunk rotation as well. Yeah, gaze is directed down, yep, so looking at the ground, possibly because that could even be because their gaze has changed, maybe they're checking it out, or it could be that their posture has changed so their gaze is physically directed down. Anything else? Range of motion down here. Yeah, so what have you noticed about how the foot is actually making contact with the ground? Yeah, so it's flatter. There's not that nice dorsiflexion, so possibly there could be also hallux range as well is reduced. Okay, so you've identified like some of the key features of like what we would call a senile gait or an older person's gait. And not every older person's gait is like that. Okay, but if you think about the ones where they say there's been some kind of significant change, that would be it. So I suppose one of the things that I would ask you, and I'm not sure what you use, and based on your answers, it seems like you're using some kind of systematic approach. There's lots of scales which look at different, in terms of helping you to identify gait. The Tonetti one is one that's used in falls, okay? It's part of a balance and gait thing, but there might be anything else you use. This is not kind of like, you don't have to use this one, but what it does kind of like go through is having a reasonably systematic approach to observing a person's gait as they're walking up and down your kind of like your practice there, and you're actually looking at them from the back and from the side. You're looking at what's happening with the initial strike, what's looking as they push off, what's happening at their hip and knee, You know, are they deviating, are they wobbly from side to side, okay? It's just taking a systematic approach from the top to down and looking at particular features. So you can use anything, and that's just one which we've just given as an example, okay? Right, some of the common things that we see, like that I see in my clinic, you see lots of foot drops, which I know you would see lots of that. You see lots of Trendelenburg gaits, okay? So if you saw a Trendelenburg gait, from my perspective, this is something which we would want to, as a physio, I would want to intervene. We want to see, can we get some strengthening of their hip muscles, okay? So I suppose you would commonly see a Trendelenburg gait, I would suspect, within your practice and stuff. Are you referring or thinking about referring on to see about getting some strengthening done, okay? So I suppose it's another trigger, something common. Would you actually, what could you actually do about that? Same as your foot drops. I know you would be addressing those as well. Sometimes they need splints, which I'm sure you would organise and stuff, or sometimes they might benefit from a strengthening program, which you could be doing yourselves as well, okay? And then your typical frail kind of like person, probably even worse than the picture we saw before. Okay, some more testing here. Normal gait. What we want to try to do here is, again, just spend a moment, look at the three different kinds of gaits and see if you can work out what they are, okay? I know it's a bit tricky. I got my 12-year-old to do this, and though he didn't know what the condition was, he described what was happening really nice, and I thought, he's done that better than I could do it. So yeah, so have a go. Okay. Do we have an answer for the first one? What? Drum? Yes. So these people often say that their friends or whoever they're walking with say that you know, they look like they're drunk when they're walking. They might even report that. What kind of like condition, other than being intoxicated, could potentially lead to something like that? And it actually could, if you were a regular drinker, it could potentially lead to problems in this kind of like area. What? Yes. Yeah, probably. I suppose if you had like a really significant inner ear disorder, you would have a very kind of like probably wide-based and unsteady gait which went from side to side. We would describe it. Yeah, so a strength deficit. So I would say that the best descriptive word would start with an A. Ataxic, isn't it? Good. It's an ataxic, that would be like an ataxic gait, and that could be cerebellar or sensory, and obviously it could be significantly different, okay? So there's inconsistent foot placement, so there's an issue with coordination, there's a much wider base and stuff, okay? It's an ataxic gait. What about this one? It's a little bit subtle, that one, but what do you think? What's happening with this gait here? So I suppose looking at it, what's happening with the first? Steps are getting shorter. What condition causes a shortening of gait over time? Parkinson's. So that's a Parkinson's or Parkinsonism. What about this last one, which is probably the shortening to the extreme, but a slightly widened base and maybe path deviation? What have you ever seen? Arthritis? Possibly not, no. But you can. But this one here is a frontal gait. So one of the things that probably like if you're working in a residential aged care facility, you